Hi everyone, it's Yvette Blowitz from SPAITGIRL.com and welcome to the Spirit Girl Talk Show podcast. I'm super excited to be here with you today and with our very special guest who is Amy Chan, who is the founder of Renew Breakup Bootcamp, a scientific and spiritual approach to healing the heart. So Amy Chan has been referred to as a chief heart hacker. And she's also now the author of Breakup Bootcamp, How to Transform Heartbreak into Healing. She needs no accolades from myself, but it's really important to know that she does so much when it comes to scientific research, the psychology, and the Observer calls her a relationship expert whose work is like that of a scientific Carrie Bradshaw. Now, she's been on Good Morning America, Vogue, Glamour, Nightline, and she's been on the front page of the New York Times. So, Amy Chan, I could keep going on and raving on about you because you're one of the world's top influencers, if we would say, when it comes to Breakup Bootcamp, even though you might just refer to yourself as the heart hacker, but it's super exciting to have you here. Welcome.
Yay, thanks for having me.
So, Amy, congratulations, first of all. Let's get to your book. Breakup Bootcamp has hit the shelves in bookstores and retail stores right around Australia. I grabbed a copy because I loved the title. And I also loved how you can transform heartbreak into healing. So can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what got you into this whole heart hacker and breakup bootcamp industry?
Yeah, so growing up, the one area of my life I just couldn't figure out was matters of the heart. I was, a high achiever at school. I climbed the corporate ladder, I had great friends, but I found myself constantly heartbroken. And so about a decade ago, I dived in to start writing and researching about love. And I had my own relationship column for the newspaper, and I still just couldn't figure it out. And that's what made me so curious about the topic. I figured if I could understand the science and the psychology, then maybe I could figure out this big mystery of love. And then I found myself in a relationship, and I thought I was going to marry this person. I thought I found my happily forever after. And life had a different plan for me. And that relationship ended through infidelity. And when it ended, I was completely shocked, and I fell apart. And I put so much of my identity in him and our future that without that, I didn't know who I was anymore. And I struggled. I had depression. I had thoughts of suicide. It was a very dark place for me. And as I started to heal, I recognized that there wasn't a place for me to go to get the type of healing and the education I needed. And I tried yoga retreats and things, and that was great, but I would come back and I would have to face my same demons. And I recognized that I needed to create the world's first breakup boot camp where people could come after breakup or divorce or just even being disappointed with dating and love. And not only come and have an experience where they could, feel safe and kind of recalibrate, but also learn about their patterns, learn about the psychology of it all, learn about the science of breakups, and leave differently than how they entered. And alas, Breakup Bootcamp was born, and I'm now in my 5th year of business. And yeah, I just launched my book, Breakup Bootcamp.
Wow, Amy Chan, congratulations on all of the achievements you've made and for being so curious of working out the science and the psychology and how it all works. Because I have to say, reading your book, The Breakup Bootcamp, you have helped so many women now, thousands and thousands and thousands of women. And it's just incredible. I loved reading the real life stories. And also from your own story you shared in the book, which I felt was so real and raw. And thank you for sharing your own mental health struggles because breakups, I know even when I have breakups and had a breakup, it's so devastating and you're so heartbroken and you go into a really deep and dark place. And you're right, your identity is caught up in and you lose yourself. So with this breakup boot camp, in the book, you kind of take us through what it would feel like if we were in New York City or joining you, which is incredible. So I love how we can kind of do a breakup boot camp from home. But how, with the science behind it, can you kind of talk about, because some people just think, oh, you'll get over this breakup, you'll be right in a few months, but you have to do a little bit more work than that, don't you? You have to really work on yourself. What are some things you've found to help heal with a breakup?
Great question. There's this old adage that goes, time heals all wounds. And I'd like to bust that myth. This is not true. Time doesn't heal the wound. Doing the work to heal the wound heals the wound. And what you'll find if you're going through a breakup, yes, the emotional intensity will start to subside. And what I've observed is around the 6 to 8 week mark, that really crazy roller coaster of emotions starts to settle. But the actual wound needs to be addressed, to be acknowledged, and to be healed. And oftentimes a breakup is just a Band-Aid being ripped off. And I know that was my case where I thought all of my pain, it was all my boyfriend's fault, and I directed all of my anger and vilified my ex. But really, after that breakup, the Band-Aid ripped off and I had to deal with my original wound of abandonment, of feeling neglected when I was a child. All of these things that had a compound effect. And I was dealing with what I call recycled pain. And so if we don't do the work to kind of understand what are the patterns, what are those subconscious beliefs that cause us to keep recreating the same emotional experiences over and over again, we're just going to keep repeating the same relationship. And so I think after a breakup, there are typically 6 stages of separation that really follow the 6 stages of grief. And it goes shock, denial, depression, anger, bargaining, and acceptance. Now, something that's not actually in the book is I think there's an extra stage, a secret stage that people don't talk about. And it comes right before acceptance. And that's accountability. Accountability is a certain stage where you kind of have this aha moment where either you've done enough suffering or the pieces of healing kind of come together like glue and you realize like, oh, wait, it's not all their fault. I also have accountability in how this relationship went, the ups and the downs and even the ending. And the focus starts to shift from being on them and what they did and didn't do or the closure they are or not giving you to yourself and what you can do now to start shifting what happens moving forward. And so depending on what stage of separation you're in, it's going to require a different strategy. And healing is not linear. You're going to pop back and around different parts of the stages. But I think if you're first fresh in the throes of heartbreak, the very beginning stage, shock is really your body's way of not getting overwhelmed by the new reality. It's actually very important. And in this stage, you just want to feel your emotions, not judge them or label them as good or bad. And you want to talk about it. You will feel like you are a broken record, but talking about it is going to help you process what's going on. And then I would suggest, though, once you kind of hit the later stages like anger, repeating the same story is not going to help you because it's going to cause you to stay hooked on the emotional charge, what gets you hooked on your ex. So I think you need to look at what stage you're in and then use the right strategy depending on that stage.
Wow, Amy. And I've got to ask you, in your book, you refer to one of the tips. If we're having a heart breakup, we're breaking up with a partner, or we're getting divorced or something, a good thing not to do is look at their social media page.
Yeah. So something that happens after a breakup, you need to understand what's going on in the brain and the body. And when you're with someone, you have neural pathways that have been wired together. And so after breakup, you might know on a cognitive level that it's over, but your brain and your body doesn't. It's like, what the hell's going on? Give me that hit of dopamine. Give me those feel-good chemicals that I used to get. And because it's not getting it, it's going to motivate you to reach out to your ex, to check their social media so you can get that hit of dopamine. You need to think of your ex like they're your drug dealer. And every time you scroll down memory lane, you reread old text messages, you check out their Instagram stories, you're only strengthening those old neural pathways, and you're not allowing new neural pathways to come about. So that's why you want to do at least 60 days of absolutely no contact.
Wow, 60 days of absolutely no contact. And Amy, I want to ask you, in the book, you really dive into sharing more about patterns that we can be attracted to, basically trying to find people that are similar to our parents, like the way we grew up or the way we were treated, like a familiarity. Can you share more about these patterns?
Yeah. So human beings are drawn to what is familiar. And this is the same goes with food, with music, and even the types of partners that we pick romantically. And there's a theory I talk about in the book called attractions of deprivation. And this is when we are drawn to people who can wound us in a very similar way to how we were wounded as children. Our psyche tries to recreate the scenario of the crime in order to try and change its ending. Now, this is done on a subconscious level, but if you grew up in a household where, say, your father wasn't around, and trying to earn their affection, earn their love was something that was very normal for you, this becomes your baseline of homeostasis. This is what you're familiar with. And so as an adult, what can happen is you subconsciously choose people who can wound you in a very similar way, because now your psyche is like, well, if only I could prove myself I'm worthy. If only I can edit myself and be perfect and look perfect and act perfect. Maybe finally I can change the ending. Maybe finally I can get that love that I've been pining for since I've been a child. And so I talk about what's called a chemistry compass, and how if you're choosing people who are toxic, it's not that you are broken. It's that your chemistry compass might be broken. And you don't go from, dating unhealthy, toxic people who are unavailable, who don't have time for you, and suddenly the next person is going to be super healthy and secure. No, you're going to reject those people and find them boring and not feel chemistry because they're not familiar to you. And so what's really important is to recognize, is my chemistry compass broken? And reflect on the last few relationships you've had. What are the key emotions that kept coming up? And see if there's a pattern. And if there is, that's a good indicator that maybe that when you feel that, 10 out of 10 attraction to someone, that's not love. Maybe it's just, oh, I could sense that this person can wound me in the same way. It's familiar. It's an intensity that I'm drawn to.
Yeah, wow. Intensity that I'm drawn to. Because, Amy, one of the common complaints about now online dating is that many of us, we might meet a person and then instantly be, wow, and then maybe rush a little bit into skipping kind of like the dating and going straight to the bedroom. And then what tends to happen, particularly with women, they get attached and then have this, like, all of these ideas of the future. So be fantasizing of how this could turn out. And yet the science is now showing that men don't necessarily have that similar chemistry, like attachment chemistry, so quickly after mating with another. Can you share more on that? Because a lot of women are using, and I just got some feedback even the other week when I was actually, mind you, recommending your book, but it was all about, I'm online dating. I've caught up with this guy a few times. I don't like, we've started seeing each other now, which has obviously gone past the coffee stage, but I really, really like him, but I don't know if he wants to go exclusive. I don't know how to have this conversation, and it's just so confusing. Another complaint is I'm always dating men who aren't available. How could we get into the are you available for a relationship conversation? Should that be done straight up from the get-go before? Yeah. How does this now work?
There's kind of two parts to your question.
Yes.
One is, how quickly should I sleep with this person? That's a common question, right? And what's the science behind it? And I think people always want to know, like, how many dates do I need to wait? And look, it's a very personal decision. And I would say generally, especially if you have found that you get anxiety or anxious after you're physically intimate with someone, listen to that and don't be so quick to share the most intimate parts of yourself before you have established trust. Get to know the person, get to know them, and that takes time. Rapport takes time. It's a dance. You can't just fast forward through it. And so, I would say that's your number one thing, is listen to your own intuition. And in terms of the science, yes, there's many different theories. And the one I talk about in the book is that when, say all things are equal, a man and a woman meet, and then on the first date, they have sex. What happens is the man will release a lot of testosterone after orgasm, and testosterone blunts the effect of vasopressin, which is the bonding chemical, right? And then women, after the orgasm, will release a lot of oxytocin and less testosterone. And so chemically speaking, it's not exactly, on par. So that's why a woman might be more privy to get a bit more emotionally attached to the man. Now, again, this isn't for everyone. There's some people who can have sex and feel completely unattached. And so, again, that's a very personal decision. Now, the second part is, well, when can I want a commitment, but I don't really want to, say anything, or is saying anything going to ruin it? Here's the thing. Communicate what you want. If you communicate what you want and the person is like, oh my gosh, like, this is way too fast, this is too scary, that's not your person. Great. You filter them out. You've just saved 5 dates, 5 months, 5 years of your time. You don't want that person. Find out sooner. Prolonging telling the truth isn't going to make that person like you more. They're not going to want to commit to you because you bring up what you want 4 months down the road versus 4 dates in. And this is different than conquesting, right? Conquesting is when you have an idea, like, I want to be married by age 29 and I want to have kids by age 32. And then you meet someone, you're like, oh, you fit in this. On first date, you're like, hey, how much money do you make? Do you want 3 children? And, do you want to buy a house by the beach? You fit in. Someone can feel that and they're like, wow, you're objectifying me and fitting me into your plan. And that feels gross. And I don't want, this is too intense. Very different from like, hey, I'm looking for something serious, especially before I get physically intimate with someone. That's just kind of my thing. And like, I'm curious, like, what are you, what's your vision? Like, and it's not like, what's your vision with me, but have an idea of what this person wants. And if they're like, oh yeah, I'm totally into polyamorous relationships, I never want children, they're so annoying, and I just want to play around, life's so fun, carpe diem, and you want a committed monogamous relationship and 5 children, okay, that's not your person. Have a fun date and be like, that's it, I'll now invest into someone else who has the same vision as me.
I love it. I love it. They're incredible, incredible advice, Amy. So it's all good from the get-go, even when we're having these text conversations, to really just ask that question from the get-go so we are not wasting our time. Like you said, if some guy doesn't want kids, he doesn't want to have a girlfriend, he doesn't want to settle down, he just wants to sleep with whoever, whenever, and be a free agent. If someone is wanting to have kids, settle down, obviously he's not the guy or girl for that partner. So from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think you can play with it, right? Like, I'm not saying you swipe on someone and the third question's like, "Hey, do you want 3 kids? Because I want 3 kids." Right? That's intense. But you can, and maybe the very first date, you're not focused so much on the future, and you're just focused on like, I want to get to know this person as a human being, and your intention is to have fun and see if you want to see this person again. I think that's really what the first date is for. Instead of sizing them up, because when you're sizing them up, you're also not being present. You're like zoom back into the future. And so I think that, you can, and it's not like the end of the world. You can kind of bring it up too, but I wouldn't have your first date as like this interview. That's also not sexy or fun.
Yeah, okay. That is great advice. And then Amy, we've got obviously now everyone's online. Should they be, prior to going to meet this person in public, should they be having a phone call conversation, a Zoom call? What's your take on this? Or should they just be saying, "Hey, let's catch up for a coffee"? And this is the coffee shop, and just making it really carefree, simple, like you said, and fun.
Yeah, if it depends on where you're at. If you are feeling totally exhausted from dating, because you're finding that you're going on a ton of dates and you're just not interested, or it's just not moving forward, then you might want to be better at filtering. And that might mean you get on the phone, or you have, a video call with them. You'll be able to pick up from their voice, from their mannerisms, if there is like a full red stop. Right? If you connect and you're like, "Oh, kind of interesting, I don't really know," that's enough for you that warrants a date. But you'll know when you get this kind of feeling of disgust, or like, "Oh," and I've had that. I've done the phone call and I felt like, "Oh," but I was like, I'm just going to try anyway. And I meet them and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that ugh feeling is like in full force right now." So yeah, you pick up a lot on a subconscious level if you are drawn to someone. And if you're, with my partner, I didn't do the FaceTime video thing. That used to be my thing. I would make everyone do that. And but then we had such great banter. I was like, fuck it. Like, let's just go. Yeah, sure. Let's meet for a drink.
Yeah, wow. Okay. So I love how you talk about checking in with your gut feeling, your intuition. If you did decide to have that conversation to help filter out on the phone, go with the gut. Now, Amy, you take us through within the book, kind of like if we were, say, in New York City with you and your therapist and healing. For someone who's wondering, breakup boot camp, what would that be like? Obviously, they are not doing push-ups. They're not doing sit-ups. Can you kind of just step our audience through a little bit, like if we hung out with you in person, which one day we hope to do again when COVID's all over, but a little bit about the boot camp side of it.
Yeah, it's a boot camp for your heart, mind, body, and soul. And it's a really holistic approach, because if you're only doing, therapy and you're only doing the brain stuff, you're not acknowledging that everything is connected. And so we have physical boot camps and virtual ones now, but the program goes like this. You basically, on the Friday, you arrive. The boot camp's always in a beautiful estate in nature where there's at least 120 acres of land and animals and farm animals. And the first day, I bring in an anxiety expert, I bring in a love addiction expert, and it's really about recalibrating. It's how do you deal with the emotions when you feel anxiety, when you're ruminating, when you are caught in a cycle, and you can't get out of a thought of like, I should have done this, he should have done this, why aren't they giving me closure? We provide the tools to help you interrupt this negative cycle that really perpetuates suffering. And then on the Saturday, we bring in the psychologists, behavioral scientists, and we really work on what are the subconscious beliefs and patterns, and we then go through step by step a framework, which is also in the book, on how to start shifting that belief. And it really works. And then after the psychologist comes, you have all this emotion. So we bring in a naturopathic doctor who leads a session in breath works to help you move emotion through the body, move trauma that's stored in your body. And then, I do many sessions on attachment theory, why we choose the people that we do, boundaries, narcissism, all that fun stuff. And we bring in an on-site chef and a whole team the entire weekend to prepare all of our food. So we're also eating really well. And on Sunday is like the fun, juicy part. I bring in a sex educator, a tantra coach, a dominatrix. I even bring in a comedian, so like we lighten things up and we learn about sex. We learn about sexuality, our shame around our bodies that we might have had, these stories about what we should and shouldn't be. And then we look at the future. What do we want to create? How do we choose a partner by using certain like values templates, and we kind of go through all of that and take an action plan of how we're going to move forward. Everyone's then paired with an accountability partner because they have an exercise they need to do for 30 days and check in with each other. And then we also do photo shoots. So everyone who wants to have their new renewed you can get a professional photo, and like they can use this for their dating profile. This is like their next chapter, and it should be celebrated. And it's absolutely amazing how these women come in on the Friday hunched over, their eyes glazed over. And by Sunday, they're just, backs are straight, they're laughing, their eyes are bright, and they're like, what's my ex's name? What? Oh, yeah, okay. So it's an incredible experience, and I feel so honored and privileged to be able to be a part of this journey for people.
Yeah, wow. Amy Chan, you are such an incredible woman, such an inspiration. It's so empowering. Just watching your face light up when our audio listeners go to the Spirit Girl YouTube channel. If you could just see Amy's face, so much passion and love and care, and it's incredible what you've created, which is the world's first breakup boot camp, and really getting to the heart of the breakup. And also you're increasing everyone's self-worth and own self-love, because I read in here, like with the boot camp, people, they're opening up their heart. You've got women crying, all of these emotions, and just to be shifting them from a really dark place where many feel that no one loves them or there's something wrong with them. I felt that was one of the greatest things to learn from the work that you do, is just transforming their love from within. So can you talk about that? Because you meet a lot of women who maybe their own love towards themselves. So if they have a breakup, it really takes a hit on their own self-love and self-confidence, and they think it's them, that no one's ever going to love them again. But your breakup boot camp knocks that on the head and just really gets rid of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think reading the book Breakup Bootcamp, or going through the actual experience, is really a journey of how do you actually create self-love, right? Like self-love is thrown around on motivational quotes, but like, okay, great. I get it, but how the hell do I get there? And the thing is, the story that most people come in with is one that has nothing to do with their ex. And it is some belief of, I am not enough. I don't belong. I'm not worthy of love. Those are the three really common ones. And then people develop coping mechanisms on how to deal with that from a very young age, right? Whether that's overachieving, overgiving, editing yourself, being submissive, not ever speaking your truth, whatever it is, you've learned to be safe with that belief system. And time again, you repeat these coping mechanisms until it becomes a part of you. And then you choose people and get into these relationships where you kind of play out the same kind of experience of how, you were treated when you were a child. And so a lot of this is really revealing, well, what is the actual belief that's been kicking around for decades that needs to be updated, and how do you actually do it? And learning the tools so that that no matter what happens, whether you're single or you get into another relationship, you're going to be just fine. And so many of the women that come, they put their identity, and that the very foundation of the ground they're standing on is based on someone else's validation of them. And so the book teaches you, how do you not base your life, your worth, and your identity on someone else, or on your job, or on whatever external factor that is? Because as long as you do that, you place your worth on external circumstances, you will never fully feel secure, because it can always be taken away from you in an instant. And so I think that when you learn the tools, you learn that you can love unafraid. You can open your heart. And because even if it doesn't work out, you'll be fine. And, I think that's kind of been my journey. I started off, even when I started off writing a book, it was about a love story, but it was always a love story about someone else and me. And by the end of the book, I realized, holy, this has always been a love story where I am the star. I am the heroine of this story. And all these people, the villains, the ex-boyfriends, the people that have come in and out, they've just been characters, and they've been critical to the plot. They've been critical to my own character development and my growth and evolution. And now I am standing with 2 feet on solid ground that's not based off of someone. And I'm in a healthy partnership now. And I know that, I can love fully and openly and vulnerably. And if something was to happen and it wasn't to work out, sure, I'm going to be hurt for sure, but I will be okay. I will not break apart into a million pieces.
I love it. I love it.
I'm going to just say one more thing.
Yeah.
I hear this all the time. He broke my heart, or I broke her heart, or I broke his heart. Look, no one can break your heart. It's not someone else's to break. And so, I look at it this way now. It's like, I was never broken. I was bruised. And even now, I don't give my heart to someone, and it's not in someone's hands. And if they fuck up, it's like, oh my God, there it goes. Million smithereens. I'm fucked. No, I love, but only I can break my own heart. No one else can do it. They don't have that power over me.
I love your empowering message, Amy. They don't have that power over me. And I too had to learn that. So I went through a really messy divorce, but only because I was a carer. At the time when I got married, my husband got diagnosed with a brain tumor, and only had 3 months to live. Long story short, the marriage over years of being a carer, we sort of fell into that. I felt like I'm a carer nurse and he's my patient. So that love really lost. But he wanted to break up because he didn't want me to be a young carer and wanted me to be happy. But I learned in that moment that I had put all of my, I stopped seeing, friends, which you do. And my whole identity was just, I lost it.
Yeah.
So like Mum told me after that messy breakup, even though it was the best thing that's ever happened to me, I'm so grateful now that I'm not a young carer. But at the time, my mum said to me, whatever you do, don't lose your identity. So whenever I now, like you're just mentioning, find someone, have your passions, have your friends, have your life, because when the love is lost, you'll be okay. So, Amy, you just really touched on that with your work. The importance, isn't it, that we keep our friends, we have our hobbies, we've got to work on our own self-love and self-care, and that is so important, isn't it? Instead of just giving it all up.
Because it happens very slowly, the disempowerment. It's not like you meet someone and then after date 2, you're like, okay, I'm going to sign up and lose my entire identity and completely mesh with your life and just become one person. It happens like, that first weekend where you're like, I'm just not going to see my friends today because I know this is the only time I could see him because he's traveling. And then the weekend after, you're like, oh, you know what? I'm just not going to work out today because I know he's feeling tired and I really want to see him. Right? It happens slowly, like death by 1,000 cuts. And especially if you have a tendency to be more codependent in relationships or more anxious in relationships, you need to actually be very disciplined in making sure that that balance stays balanced and that you don't just, one thing after another keep breaching your own limits and boundaries and sense of self, because it happens slowly. And then you find yourself like, oh my gosh, like the very foundation I'm standing on is, based on this person.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now, Amy, you obviously, congratulations on writing your book. This is so exciting. It's in every bookstore in Australia. It's at our majors, whether that be Kmart, Big W. Obviously, it's online everywhere. I've already been recommending your book, Breakup Bootcamp, to so many people because for me, it was just, I just loved, you had so many exercises in here that we can actually do at home. So I felt like I was on a mini boot camp with you, but at home. And I loved the real life stories and all of the work in here. But you give so much to others. Like you're helping so many people right around the world now with your online workshops, obviously boot camps. But how do you take care of yourself? Like what are your self-care rituals as a busy go-getter?
Yeah. I try to meditate. I try to say do it every day, but I realistically do it a couple times a week where, in the morning, I make a decision. Like, is my decision going to be reach for my phone and read my emails? And that's, an act of self-hatred. Or is it going to be an act of self-love where I'm going to go straight into saying an affirmation for the day to set the tone of the day and meditate for 10 to 15 minutes. And sometimes it's self-love and sometimes it's not. I'm still a work in progress as well. And I take time to just be present with, when I'm eating. Like I try to make it a rule. Don't listen to a podcast. Don't read a book. Don't be watching TV. Just eat the meal and do what's in front of you. These small little things, going for a walk. Sometimes I'll be like, okay, try to just not listen to music. Just like notice things and being mindful. These small little things, they actually make a big difference to your overall state of joy. And what else? Every night when I have dinner with my partner, we have a ritual where we do a gratitude practice and we say what we're grateful for and why. And it's every single day we do that. I journal as well. And I spend my mornings typically at a cafe reading. So it's really important to me for my mornings. It's like, I'm not like doing a bunch of work or busy stuff. I'm doing things that inspire me, that get my mind working, that encourage me to write. So yeah, those are some of the things I do.
Oh, wow. That is so beautiful. So you really love reading. And obviously, you do a lot of writing about relationships, breakups, because you are referred to as the heart hacker. And you've written and been published in so many high profile like Vogue magazine and Glamour. And for a girl out there who's probably like, wow, Amy, you are the shining, or a woman or a guy who's tuning in, you're a shining light. You're giving them so much hope. Like they're really on the couch crying, feeling deeply depressed, that their whole life plan of getting married, having kids is just blowing up in their face. Or perhaps this person they thought was so into them, they've just found out they've got another girlfriend. Like, it's just remarkable to see from your own heartbreak, which was really dark and heavy, really saddest time, your lowest time, to now. if there was someone out there struggling like during COVID and they're also going through a breakup, if you could give them any words of wisdom, if they were tuning in now to share some light, what would it be?
I would say, and I say this in the book, our greatest lesson in this lifetime is to practice opening our hearts, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. And I say this as a reminder to not let disappointment and pain cause you to put walls around your heart. That doesn't help you. And it's a coping mechanism, it's a defense mechanism, but ultimately you just keep giving your power away to someone who wasn't your person. And so, yeah, it hurts and it's uncomfortable, but practice softening, practice opening your heart even when it hurts. And if you are finding yourself feeling stuck and forgiveness and acceptance is overwhelming and too, far out of a goal, just work on cultivating compassion for yourself. And you can do this just through, guided meditations. And you will find that if you practice compassion on a daily basis, you will automatically start to create compassion for the person who hurt you. And that is a very first step in order to get to a place of forgiveness. You cannot come to a place of forgiveness without compassion. And the great news is you can start right now. It's a muscle that you build. It's not supposed to be easy. This is the place where you expand as much as it hurts. So try to not judge this experience as bad, as something to get out of. Instead, reach and dig deep. And why does it hurt so bad? Where are there some wounds that maybe you haven't dealt with? And here's your opportunity so that you can love in a more healthy way in the future.
Wow. Thank you, Amy. That's beautiful words of wisdom. That is incredible. And we all struggle with rejection. We all struggle when things don't go to plan. But you're right. I've learned also that it's through either the rejection or the heartbreak or the breakups. Like, I'm a much better person for every lesson, and I've grown so much. And I, too, like you, Amy, always thought that love came from a man, like the whole Cinderella thing. And then I think it was only through my own heart breakup that I learned, oh, no, hang on a minute. It doesn't come from the man or another person, because that comes and goes. It has to come from within. Amy, I've got to ask you this question to maybe help prevent some breakups. Lots of people reach out to me, or when I talk to them in the streets, Spirit Girl community are saying, okay, they have a hard time with dating multiple people. Now, isn't the dating process all about just catching up for coffee, getting to see someone? It's kind of a filtering process. Women generally feel bad if they're dating one person for coffee, then they don't want to date another person for coffee.
So is your question, should you date multiple people at once?
Yes, but obviously these are just coffee dates. They're not sleeping with multiple men, but we've got women who are breaking up, say in their 50s. They're going into the online dating for the very first time.
Right.
They feel like they're getting advice like, oh, you've got to date more than one person. And then they're like, oh, hang on a minute, I'm dating this guy so far, I want to see how it goes.
Okay. Look, there's again, this is a very personal, approach, and it's going to depend on what works for you. I look at it like this. Generally, dating is like if you were to apply for a job, right? And this job's like kind of cool. They haven't given you an offer. They haven't shown any intention yet that they're going to give you an offer. Do you just stop applying for jobs? Or do you're like, hey, this job also looks kind of cool. Okay, I'll apply for this job too. And then eventually you get your offers. You're like, oh, you know what? The best offer is this one, right? And I know that sounds really transactional, but it can help you kind of, this metaphor can help you understand, like, in the beginning, especially if it's just a coffee date, you don't need to pledge a loyalty and alliance with this person who hasn't indicated that they are interested in furthering the connection. It's a dance. It's, I take one step, you take one step. It's not you take one step, I'll take 3 steps and try to make sure and drag you 2 more steps so you reach to where I'm at. That causes an imbalance, and that might cause you to have anxiety over, does this person like me or not? Now, at the same time, I don't think that you should date multiple people just as a way to deal with your own anxiety and fears, right? When we are hedging, say you meet someone, you really like them, it's going well, maybe you haven't had a talk about commitment yet because it's too early and you're still just hanging out and having fun, but you feel connected, and then suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, I'm scared I'm going to get rejected, so I'm going to date 4 other people. That's something that is very common for people who have an anxious attachment style. The root of it is not from love. It's not coming from a place of love and abundance. The root of it comes from a place of insecurity and fear. And so you need to understand, where's the root of your actions coming from? And if it's ever coming from a fear and insecurity, it's not going to end up well. Life has a funny way of correcting itself. So I'm going to, I'll use myself as an example. I've met people, went on multiple dates with them, and, it was never discussed if there was a commitment, but I could feel it was going somewhere. But I had so much anxiety because I had an anxious attachment style. I would just date some other guy that I didn't even like so that I could have a backup option. And every single time, something would end up happening with the person I actually liked, and it wouldn't work out. And I don't know if some universe was spying on me or what the hell happened, but that's what happened for me. And then when it came to my current partner, when I met him, it went well. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stop the antics that I do. And I remember even 2 weeks into us dating, he had deleted his dating apps. And I still had mine. I didn't check, but I was like, maybe I should just look. And I was falling back into my old bad habits. I was like, I'm not going to do that. I know exactly what I'm doing right now, and I'm sabotaging. So I'm going to delete it. And, now we've moved from New York to Vancouver together. We've built a beautiful partnership. I didn't do those old things that were birthed from fear.
Oh, wow. Amy, I love this. I didn't do these old things that were birthed from fear. So that anyone tuning in, our listeners, especially, that's incredible advice, because it just gives you that opportunity, like you said, what you did with your beautiful partnership that you've fallen into now and developed, is you just went, you know what, I'm just going to see how this goes. And I'm not going to be sort of busy over here sabotaging, talking to this person or that person, and kind of coming up with scenarios that could go bad. You kind of, because that can happen to us, can't it? We can kind of think, oh, well, if this goes bad, shit, we better have a backup plan, because we've been taught have a plan and a B plan and a C plan and a D plan. So that's great advice. Now, Amy, I could talk to you forever about breakups, dating, online, offline, all of this stuff. But before we say goodbye, what was it like for you to write a book? Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people out there that aspire to be like you, to write a book. You are such a go-getter. I know you love to write, but how does it feel now? I'm here in Australia holding up your book as an author. Does it feel incredible? Is this a blessing to come out of COVID, even though the whole world was shut down? Here I am right now in Australia holding your book.
Yeah, it's really cool. And, I think when I hear how people have been impacted by the book or how they made a different decision because of what they learned. And instead of, giving another chance to the guy that was super abusive to them, they're like, you know what? I learned this thing and I'm going to do this new thing now. Right? Like when I hear these stories, I am so just honored and grateful. And it really reminds me of like, why do I do what I do? Because, I'm going to be honest, like I've been such an achiever and I've been really goal oriented. And like, even when I published the book, I was like deep into promotion of it. And I was just like, next. And so, yeah, I've had to actually learn how to just be present and embrace what I've already created and what I already have. And that's a constant practice for me. So yeah, but thank you for all the supportive words and all the love. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, the book is so beautiful, and it's so good for me when a lady's talking about, unavailable men. And I'm like, oh, you're gonna get the Breakup Bootcamp book, and it's not you, it's not you, and la la la. Like it's so empowering when you can help someone's self-worth and self-love. And you're obviously, this has been there's so many people that love Huffington Post, and Adriana Huffington says a new kind of relationship guide for women. But you've got so many people at all media outlets and everyday people just reading the book and loving it. Are you super glad that you sat down and wrote this book? And did you write it before COVID? COVID hit?
Yeah, it was supposed to launch like a year before COVID hit. So it just kept getting delayed. But yeah, and I started blogging over 10 years ago. So I never knew why I was blogging, what it would amount to, but there's some of my blogs are like, integrated into the book. So I've been writing this book, I think, for a really long time. But I think the journey was really started about over 10 years ago, just me trying to navigate relationships. And this is my life's work. And, while I don't regret any of my heartbreaks or experiences, I would have to say, like, I wasted a lot of time and energy being heartbroken. And I don't think that's necessary. If I was to do it all over again, I probably wouldn't have suffered for so long. I spent so much of my life suffering in love, and I could have used that energy to create beautiful art and works into this world. And so I wrote this book and I have my boot camp because I don't want to ever take away anyone's pain. I think pain is a wonderful teacher, but you don't need to suffer for so long. And when you learn the tools, you are able to, I think, transform your pain. You can alchemize it into a motivating force, inspiration, into light. And then you can have a positive ripple effect in the world.
Oh, that is so beautiful, Amy, because it's just to help women to not get into another abusive relationship after another, or, meeting another control freak that takes their credit card off them and gives them no money and doesn't let them see their mum or dad, or, all of these things. It's incredible. So I want to thank you, Amy, for all of the work that you've done or do, and just for being so vulnerable, even all those years ago, opening up your heart and writing about how you're feeling, because that's not easy. And even talking about, the depression and the suicidal thoughts and how breakups do impact our emotions and the way we feel and our mental health is such, I really hope it gives so many people who are tuning in today, our audience, such great hope that you can overcome anything, especially the darkest time, which is your heartbreak. And you can heal and you can transform your life. So, Amy, how can we stay in touch with you after this podcast show?
Yeah, my website's renewbreakupbootcamp.com. And I'm on Instagram at Miss Amy Chan and Renew Your Heart. So, yeah, you can find me there.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. You're an absolute star. Love your work. You are just what you're doing in the world is so needed. It's such a gift. You are such an incredible inspiration and empowering. I love your book. One of my favorite books to read, everybody, Breakup Bootcamp. I kid you not. I'm a total science nerd, and just reading the real life stories where Amy is literally hugging people who are crying at her boot camp. And there's so much in here to help you transform your heartbreak into healing. So grab a copy, everybody. And Amy, I love you to bits. You are amazing. Thank you so much. I got goosebumps.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. But thank you, Amy. We'll say goodbye to our beautiful guest, Amy Chan. Be sure to follow her work. Grab a copy of her brand new book. We'll put it as part of the Spirit Girl Book Club. We'll put it in the link. And I want to say goodbye to Amy, and I want to thank all of you right around the world for tuning into the Spirit Girl Talk Show podcast. I love you to bits. You are enough. You are worthy, and you deserve to love yourself from the inside out. And with the help of Amy Chan, you are now going to overcome your heartbreak, heal, and transform your life and find love again. So we'll say goodbye. Be sure to subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review, and to tell someone you love too. And together, let's feel good from within. Bye for now.